It's not necessary. I'll wait for this part. That's it. So, to the top left. We're good. No, once it says live, we're good.
Okay.
And here's Ms. Schuster.
Oh, good.
Okay, the time is now 6:31. I'd like to call the December 13th, 2021 Amity Board of Ed to order. First order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next item is swearing in of new Board of Education members. We do have, I believe, one of our 2 members here tonight. So we would like to administer the oath of office to Mr. Hartshorn. So Sean, if you could please stand up. I'm going to read this, and if you agree, please signify by saying I do. Mr. Hartshorn, do you solemnly swear that you will faithfully discharge, according to law and Board of Education policies, your duties as a member of the Board of Education of Amity Regional School District Number 5, so help you God?
I do.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And moving on, we have the election of officers, and Dr. Byers, if you could please start us off on that.
I absolutely can. So I start this evening by reading the bylaw of the board at 9120 regarding officers. The officers of the Board of Education shall consist of chairman, vice chairman, secretary, treasurer, and deputy treasurer. Such officers shall be elected from the board membership at its annual organizational meeting in December and shall remain in office until new officers are elected at the next annual organizational meeting, unless such officers cease to be members of the Board of Education or otherwise resign or are removed from office. If there is a vacancy in any officer position during the course of the year, the board membership shall act promptly, commencing no later than the next regularly scheduled meeting, to elect a new officer to fill the vacancy. The new officer will take office immediately upon completion of the election. Board members shall vote by a show of hands, and a majority of the full board membership shall be required in order to elect an officer. If there are more than 2 nominees and no nominee receives a majority vote of the full board membership, the nominee receiving the lowest number of votes shall be removed from the list of candidates before balloting again. The vote of each member shall be reduced to writing and shall be made available for public inspection within 48 hours, excluding Saturday, Sunday, and legal holidays. The results of the election shall also be recorded in the minutes of the meeting, and the minutes shall be available for public inspection at all reasonable times. And so we will begin by asking for nominations for chairperson for the Board of Education. Mr. Davis?
I'll nominate John Belfonti.
And is there a second for
I'll second.
Mr. Belfonti? That was Mr. Brow?
Yep.
Okay.
Nominations to be closed.
So we can close nominations if there are no additional nominations. And at this point, I shall call the vote for the election of John Belfonti as chairperson for the Board of Education. All those in favor, please raise your hands and keep them up long enough for Ms. Caro to get a count. Okay, thank you. And Dr. Oladele and Ms. Schuster also raised their hands. And at this point, I will turn it over to Chairman Belfonti to finish the rest of the elections.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I will now recite bylaw number 9122. This is for the vice chairperson. The vice chairperson will act in place of the chairperson when necessary and preside at meetings when the chairperson is temporarily absent. The vice chairperson cannot fill vacancies required to be filled by the chairperson and does not serve as an ex officio member of committees. Work with the chairperson and superintendent to become generally informed of board business. In the absence of the chairperson, act as a resource to the superintendent on decisions which may require further input between board meetings. In case of illness, resignation, or death of the chairperson, the vice chairperson, as deemed by the board, becomes chairperson for the unexpired term. In the event that the secretary is incapacitated or out of state, the vice chairperson's signature shall be an alternative signature on all legal documents requiring the signature of the secretary. Okay, so at this point, I will ask for nominations for vice chairperson. Ms. Carlson,
Thank you. I'd like to nominate Mr. Patrick Reed.
do we have a second? Ms. thank you. Are there any other nominations?
Move nominations be closed.
Second.
And who's the second?
Second,
Brown.
Mr. Brown. Okay, and we can call the vote for vice chairperson for Mr. Reed. All those in favor?
Everyone.
Okay.
Are you voting?
Congratulations.
It's not clear. Are you voting?
Sure. Okay, congratulations, Mr. Reed. Moving on to secretary, I will recite bylaw number 9123. Okay, secretary. The secretary of the board shall keep minutes or cause minutes to be kept of all meetings of the board and shall cause copies of such minutes to be forwarded to each member of the board. In accordance with the general statutes, the board secretary shall cause a copy of the minutes of all board meetings to be placed on file at the board office no later, than 7 days after the date on which the board shall have met. Such minutes will be available for board inspection, except that such minutes will not be termed official minutes until approved by the Board of Education at a duly convened meeting of the board. The board secretary shall also make provisions that members of the board are notified of all regular and special meetings. The board secretary shall attend to the official correspondence of the board. Okay, so at this point, I will ask for nominations for board secretary.
Carl.
I'll
Okay,
second.
thank you, Mr. Davis. Seconded by Ms. Carlson. Thank you. Are there any other nominations?
Move nominations be closed.
Okay. Thank you. Second by Mr. Brown. Thank you. Okay. All those in favor of Ms. Eichler to be board secretary? Okay. That motion passes. Congratulations, Ms. Eichler. And now we move on to election of the treasurer. I will read bylaw number 9126. The treasurer, elected by the Board of Education in accordance with CGS 10-46, shall give bonds to the board in an amount determined by the members of the board, the cost of which shall be borne by the school district. Pay out and/or authorize the payment of monies of the regional school district as may be directed by the board. Perform such other duties as may be authorized by the board. For each school year commencing July 1st, the treasurer shall be bonded for the faithful performance of his or her duties, said bond to be written by an insurance company licensed to do business in the state of Connecticut and in an amount to be determined by the board. The board shall indemnify and hold the treasurer harmless against any liability imposed as a result of his or her actions as treasurer, except for his or her own willful misconduct, and shall also indemnify and hold the treasurer harmless as provided by section 10-235 of the Connecticut General Statutes. Okay, so at this point, I am going to ask for any nominations for board treasurer.
Excuse me, I'll nominate Dr. Jennifer Turner.
Second.
Second by Mr. Davis. Are there any other nominations?
Move to close nominations.
Okay. Do we have a second?
A second.
Ms. Carlson, thank you. Okay, all those in favor of Dr. Turner for treasurer, please signify by raising your hand. Congratulations. That passes. And we will now move on to deputy treasurer. So I will read bylaw number 9127. Deputy treasurer. The deputy treasurer elected by the Board of Education in accordance with CTS 10-46 shall give bonds to the board in an amount determined by the members of the board, the cost of which shall be borne by the school district. Pay out and/or authorize the payment of monies of the regional school district as may be directed by the board and in the absence of the treasurer. Perform such other duties as may be authorized by the board or treasurer. For each school year commencing July 1st, the deputy treasurer shall be bonded for the faithful performance of his or her duties. Said bond to be written by an insurance company licensed to do business in the state of Connecticut and in an amount to be determined by the board. The board shall indemnify and hold the deputy treasurer harmless against any liability as a result of his or her actions as treasurer, except for his or her own willful misconduct, and shall also indemnify and hold the deputy treasurer harmless as provided by section 10-235 of the Connecticut General Statutes. The deputy treasurer will execute the role of the treasurer. If the treasurer is out of state, if the treasurer is incapacitated or otherwise unable to perform the duties of treasurer as directed by the treasurer, the deputy treasurer serves under the treasurer and will perform the assigned duties of the treasurer under the direction of the treasurer. Okay. Would someone like to make a nomination for deputy treasurer?
I'll nominate Dr. Schuster.
Do we have a second? Okay. Mr. Davis. Are there any other nominations? Okay. Seeing none.
Move nominations be closed.
Okay. Do we have a second?
A second.
Thank you, Ms. Eichler. Okay, so all those in favor of Ms. Schuster to be deputy treasurer, please signify by raising your hand. Okay. Congratulations, Ms. Schuster. Okay. That concludes.
That concludes the elections.
Okay.
We should go back and do another oath of office so that
We
Christina
shall.
can get sworn in.
Absolutely. Yeah.
As I was wandering the halls.
That's okay. All right, so Christina, would you mind standing up, please, and we'll administer the oath of office? So if you agree to this, if you can please say I do at the end. Do you solemnly swear that you will faithfully discharge, according to law and Board of Education policies, your duties as a member of the Board of Education of Amity Regional School District Number 5, so help you God? Congratulations. All right, okay. Moving on to approval of minutes, item number 5. The first minutes are from the November 8th, 2021 meeting on page 3. Would someone like to make a motion to accept those minutes?
I'll make the motion. to accept the
Carlson,
minutes.
thank you. And seconded by Mr. Reed, thank you. Any comments regarding the minutes? Okay, seeing none, I will call the vote for acceptance.
Kara, will you call the roll?
Yeah, Roger, thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Belfonti?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Eichler?
Yes.
Mr. Hartshorn?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Ms. Lovera-Dadio?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Dr. Turner?
Abstain.
Dr. Oladele?
Abstain.
What was that? I couldn't hear you.
Abstaining from the vote.
And Ms. Schuster?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that passes, thank you. And the second one is the Special Board of Education meeting found on page 10 from the November 29th, 2021 meeting. So someone like to make a motion to accept those minutes.
I'll make the motion to accept those minutes.
Second, Mr. Davis, seconded. Any comments regarding those minutes? Okay, seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Mr. Belfonti?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Zeigler?
Yes.
Mr. Hartshorn?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard? Yes. Ms. Revere Daddio?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Dr. Turner?
Yes.
Dr. Oladelli?
Abstain.
Ms. Schuster?
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Moving on, item 6, the student report.
Hello everyone, it's very nice to see you. So I'm going to start with the high school report. And first up, I'm going to talk about the Amity flag football game. So the game took place on Monday, November 22nd, and we hosted North Cleveland High School for the annual flag football game. Last year's was delayed because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So the school spirit was pretty high at this year's game. The event was held on the new Amity football field, and our team took home a victory, which means we are officially on a flag football winning streak. I do feel obligated to shout out my sister because she was the quarterback. And I'm just gonna leave that there. Next up, the Amity High School Music Department will be having their 2021 winter concert indoors, which is the first indoor live audience concert in 2 years. It will be called a Very Winter Concert and will be held on December 21st at 6:30 p.m. in the Brady Center, and admission will be free. Next up, students are still taking advantage of the afternoons with administration to both discuss and talk to administration about any issues in the schools. Our next meeting will be tomorrow, December 14th. Next up, Amity Creative Theater put on their annual play this past weekend. It was the first live audience in 2 years, which was very exciting. The featured production was Poppins, which is a spin on the Harry Potter story. Maren and I both saw the production on closing night Saturday, and the hard work from students and administrators alike was very evident. And last up, PSAT scores were released from College Board to all juniors on December 6th. All juniors worked very hard for these scores, and the National Merit Scholarship qualifying semifinalists will be notified next year.
And I'll move on to the middle school report. So all of the middle school students took a class trip to Amity Regional High School on December 9th to view the Amity High School fall production Puffs. And as Ali said, we saw it on closing night and it was like truly amazing. We are so proud of all of our friends that took place in the play. And it was nice to see everybody back in the crowd and in the theater. And following the production, students took part in an important presentation from the high school counseling department and administration regarding high school course offerings. And another quick note, the Amso and AMSP debate team is preparing for an online tournament on December 19th. Working in collaboration with members from the Amity High School debate team, our students will debate the motion, "This House, the boycott the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics." On December 2nd, AMSP held our winter concert, and this event was another step in our return to the performing arts at Amity. And to accommodate for safe space and social distancing, we divided the band in choir concerts, alternating start times and allowing the crowds to shift between concerts. And again, student performances exceeded their expectations, and they are anticipating to see more student growth as they look forward to the spring concerts. And lastly, AMSB held a canned food drive before the Thanksgiving break, and students and staff donated items for the local food pantries, and in 3 days, collected over 40 large grocery bags full of non-perishable items. And these donations will help support those in need across our community, and they serve as a testament to the kind and giving nature of our school community. And a little orange, Amity Middle School, shipping back to Orange, at the Orange Middle School, auditions for the Amso Spartan Players production of Mary Poppins Jr. is on December 20th. And the middle school would like to thank the Jamie Foley Foundation for its continued support of the Spartan Players. And the Jamie Foley Arts Foundation has supported the Amity Creative Theater here at the high school as well. So, yeah, and the very last point is the Amso students and staff participated in Connecticut Children's Hospital Pajama Day on December 10th, and students generously donated over $350 to support children with cancer and blood disorders. And this concludes the middle school and high school course.
Do any members have any questions for our students? Thank you for that great report. Appreciate it. Okay, we'll move on to item 7, public comment. I will read a brief statement, which I know you're probably getting sick of, but I'm going to read it again. At this time, the board would like to invite members of the public up to the lectern for public comment. Please state your full name and address. If you are a student or under 18 years of age, please state only your first name. Each speaker will be allowed up to 3 minutes for public comment. Also, the board reserves its right to limit the public comment on any one subject to 20 minutes. Please note that as a matter of board policy, the board does not respond to public comments or questions, but may discuss the subject and respond if appropriate at a future time. As a reminder, as per the governor's executive orders 13A and 14, all attendees must wear a mask while inside school buildings, including while making remarks at the podium. Thank you for your cooperation. Are there any members that would like to speak?
If you don't mind, I just want to get some clarification.
Sure.
You guys, I'm too short of it.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm too short. My name is Liz Nusafora, and I live at 356 Lambert Road in Orange. First of all, I'd like to know why at the high school, Mrs. Mann tells my son to put his mask over his nose when he's walking alone in the hallways, yet her son and several other kids were seen 20 feet from her with their masks down around their chin. That isn't hypocrisy, I don't know what is. And while it's proven that those who have had their shots and wear their masks and contract and spread COVID, Bethany Middle School just had 3 vaxxed teachers with COVID, you still feel the need to single out those who haven't had their shots and won't get them. In regards to pushing masks for certain sports, but only for those unvaxxed, such as running track, ice hockey, basketball, and cheerleading, I'd love to see all of you run 10 laps in the gym wearing a mask and see how you feel, because we know none of you can do it. And despite the fact the World Health Organization does not recommend wearing a mask during exercise or sports, because it can make breathing more difficult, you go by your local health department recommendations, who are obviously brainless when it comes to common sense. So here are some facts that I've handed out to you, but we all know you probably won't read them. Number 1, because you breathe heavily while you are exercising, there are high chances of you getting claustrophobic as your air supply is restricted by your mask. Number 2, stamina all boils down to the amount of oxygen you are inhaling while you exercise. If you're wearing a mask, then of course your stamina will be lower as you won't be taking in as much oxygen. Number 3, the lack of oxygen and breathlessness can also lead to nausea and dizziness. Number 4, when you keep on rebreathing the air you exhale, it accelerates your heart rate. As a result, there are high chances that your body might dehydrate. And number 5, when you exercise with a mask on, you are rebuilding the carbon dioxide levels in your body, which can lead to unconsciousness, and in turn can cause brain damage due to lack of oxygen. Additionally, sweat can make the mask wet, which impacts breathing and promotes the growth of microorganisms. These are all facts that you refuse to take into consideration. And in case you're not aware, recently in China, 2 young boys died while running laps in their gym class, and they were both wearing masks. Ultimately, you, not your health department, make the final decision, and they are irresponsible decisions. And when a child in this district ends up in the hospital or dies, due to your lack of common sense, we will personally hold all of you responsible.
Okay, we're at 3 minutes right now, so you
And even
finish
though
your
you
thought.
will fight it, as you will claim that it's the state's responsibility, you are the ones that are ultimately responsible for our children's health while in school. curriculums.
I, Felicia, 419 Orange Center Road in Orange. 4 of my children went through the public schools here in Orange, and I now have 4 grandchildren in the Orange Public Schools. My grandson is in the 8th grade, and my granddaughter will enter the 7th grade next year. A few weeks ago, I got a call to pick up my grandson, who was asking to leave because he felt uncomfortable being forced to watch a film about transgender and dead naming. That's a hot topic now, although I had no idea what dead naming was, but Mrs. Burks attempted to explain it to me and why she chose to have teachers bring students down to watch a film on it. She was hoping to promote kindness for the beleaguered folk who are identifying as something other than the sex they were born with, and were demanding to be identified as such along with a new name they had chosen for themselves, and apparently they're permitted to bark or meow if someone slips up, and the dog collars are worn to punctuate the new identity. What in God's name is going on in our schools today? And why have our principals and school boards decided to go along with this and other corrupting curriculum? And why weren't parents notified that their children were going to be required to watch this dribble? A desperate attempt to normalize something that is not normal. You are welcome to identify it any way you want, but don't expect me to validate it or say it's normal. And don't try to force others to go along with these fantasies. My grandson will not set foot into the high school. And now even the middle school is unsafe and a hostile hotbed of wokeism for normal conservative Christian students who just want their education and some sports on the side.
Good evening, board members and members of the public. My name is Karen. I live in Orange. I'm a former Amity Board of Ed member. I've been just talking to you previously in September. Seems like nothing's changed at all. And to continue what Liz said, many people are doing the wrong thing because they don't know the right thing to do. Here's an FTC Act that I suggest you all look up. It's a deceptive medical practice clause. It's illegal to promote a product without at least 2 peer-reviewed studies, clinical trials. Cloth face masks have been found to increase influenza-like illness, and a healthy population should not wear a mask. Face masks have never been shown to have any benefit. In fact, any mandate is a violation to suggest forcing someone to wear what's considered a medical device. Anyone promoting a face mask is actually committing a civil violation. So basically, you're all put on notice that you cannot force someone to wear a face mask. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Good evening. I'm Prakash Patel from Cedar Grove in Orange, and I'm here to talk about, I wasn't here in the last meeting, but policy P145.53, the transgender and gender non-conforming youth. And I've talked to numerous parents out there who have kids in the school and parents whose kids may be coming to school here. And a lot of them have an issue with the restroom accessibility and locker room accessibility of making it unigender. And all the parents agree that the cisgender students also have rights, just like the transgender students have rights. And if the school can keep a male restroom, female restroom, and then have one in between for unigender people that want to use it, and same thing with the locker rooms. So, because there are kids we talk to that they are feeling uncomfortable if they know that they have to use restrooms where transgender students would be coming in. And the other question was, that we had concern was with the field trips that the students would go on. That the transgender students may have to room with the cisgender students. So there's a clarification that would be needed on that statement that was in this policy. And then regarding masks that they were talking about, I'm in the medical field, and mask, if you're vaccinated, people do not need to wear it because the vaccine is supposed to protect them. If people elect to wear it voluntarily, that's a different issue. Last year when the pandemic started, I never had a mask on the whole month of April until Lamont made it a law to put it on. And the whole month of April, I was outside shopping and doing stuff, and there was no issue at that time. But it should be something that shouldn't be mandated. It should be something that should be voluntary. So that's it. Thank you.
That concludes our public comment. We'll move on to item 8, Superintendent's Report.
Absolutely. I have to say that both Ms. Bowler and Ms. Coronada did a really good job and stole most of what was in my report, but that's fine. So I do want to commend the 8th graders for the visit that they made to the high school where they were able to watch Pups and get their information about electives. The comment from the high school community was that they were a wonderful audience and a fabulous group to have there. I'd also like to point out just a couple other things that we are doing to help our students. So CBITS is the cognitive behavioral intervention for trauma in schools. And we have regularly had our counselors and our school social workers and trained in this protocol to help students. So we continue to make sure that anybody new coming into the district is training. And we now have 12 clinicians who are trained in CBITS and able to run groups within our 3 schools in Amity. I just want to point out that in continuing our efforts for inclusion and diversity, the Spartan seminar in December was specifically designed around inclusion for students with intellectual difficulties and differences. And it also happened to coincide with the Jingle Jam that is performed by students in our unified programs each holiday season. And then lastly, I would be remiss if I did not recognize Amity Creative Theater for their production of Pups. They did an amazing job, and you know, it was very nice to be back into a pretty normal situation in the Brady Center to watch that performance. And so that is pretty much the highlights of the superintendent's report right now.
Excellent. Thank you. Anyone have any questions for Dr. Myers? Mr. Davis?
Dr. Myers, just recently, as I'm sure you're aware, there's been a lot of questions regarding security in schools, and I know we have a concern and issues, and I also know that the administration and the school district have worked very hard on addressing some of those issues. Could you give us an idea of what's been going on?
So I mean, so in a very sort of general respect, I mean, obviously we had our debriefing after our last incident, so we made some improvements to our processes and did some additional collaboration with our police departments. We have reinstated kind of the drills that we didn't have during COVID, so I'm pretty certain all of our schools within the course of this month will have a full comprehensive lockdown drill, and so we will go back to practicing those. We are looking at some different software options for the entire security safety drill process. which would also include a way in which we could manage the reunification process electronically and take advantage of kind of tablets and laptops and cell phones instead of what we have been doing more traditionally with paper and calling rooms on our intercom systems. And then, you'll see in our budget request, for next year, the request for additional school security staff, because we are a little short-staffed at the high school with the addition of the Sally Court. So we are attending to and addressing that. I think the biggest things, which if you read anything about anything that's happened in any of the schools, is really the reliance of the school community and using Speak Up and not kind of taking things lightly. Pretty much every single incident we've seen has been because somebody else in the school community let administration know of their concerns. I think on top of that, things like CBITS, which I was just mentioning, as well as we have our Sandy Hook Promise Signs of Suicide coming up after the holiday break. Those are the ways we address the mental health needs of the students who are showing some distress. And then this Friday, I'm actually attending a conference that's being put on by CAPS and the Department of Education for all superintendents about addressing the threats of violence in schools that we're seeing an uptick on, just to see if there's anything else we have out there. So it's kind of where we are right now. And, at some point, if the board wants to either have it on the agenda as executive session or reconvene the ad hoc committee of the board for school security, I'd be happy to, in executive session, get into more details about some of those things that I mentioned.
Good, thank you. If any board member feels that way, certainly we can speak to me and talk about that and forum to do that.
Dr. Byers, can I ask you, you just mentioned quickly about the lockdown drill. If we have time to talk about it now, how will that go down? Will parents be aware of that prior to it happening?
It depends on which school we're in. But what we're trying to, I know we've talked about different strategies, but what we would like to actually do is kind of test the notification piece of it. So to send a message that we're in a drill during the drill, but not send it out ahead of time, because that's kind of, again, some of the lessons we've learned through the last process. But it's also contingent because we work with a different police department for each school, and we're working with them, it's kind of also how they want to operate that particular drill.
I'm just curious. Thank you.
There's a big time at that point too, we define which drill we're going to be doing, what that means and what the other ones are. So we can all become educated again, because quite honestly, there's a lot of terminology that I think typically, unless you're in a school environment where you're an administrator or a teacher, that means that they're all parent or remember what
So typically almost all, not even typically, every time there's a drill like that, the principals will follow up with an email to the community explaining that this drill happened and, usually kind of like that it went really well. And at that point, I'll just ask them to go back into the one-page cheat sheet that we created for the community and just kind of reference exactly what the definition of that drill is and what the expectation would be for parents during that drill.
Any other questions for Dr. Byers? We'll move on to item 9, discussion and possible action on setting 2022-2023 school calendar, found on page 15.
So again, this was presented at the last board meeting just for people to take a look at to see if there were any concerns or things that were noticeably sticking out. I didn't hear from anyone. I know Mr. Davis had brought up the concern around the back-to-back dates in December of the 2 half days and sort of that perspective of kind of 2 half days, but in trying to make sure that we didn't start to dip into the weeks like next week where we start to have lots of holiday concerts and all of the things that tend to happen in December, we weren't quite comfortable trying to split up that professional development half day and the parent Conference is half day because we know the 2 following weeks become very busy with other evening activities that the schools are putting on. So we would recommend to keep those sort of back-to-back dates that we have both there and then in February. But I'm happy to answer any questions about the calendar for next school year.
Dr. Byers, do the students usually break, is the holiday break usually around the 23rd, or has it become sort of closer to the holidays over the years?
No, it's the December break usually has always been on the 23rd or the sort of last kind of day before the weekend that comes up before that. So there are times when it's like the 20th and you get kind of the really big break. And then there are times when it's the 23rd and you get the really small break.
Thank you.
Dr. Byers, why is April 7th a full day instead of a half day? I'm not objecting, I'm just curious. Sorry, I have to look. And it's the Friday before spring break. I think those are usually have been half days.
I think that's Good Friday. I could be wrong,
I
but
imagine
think
it
it's
is.
Good Friday. Yes.
We usually have Good Friday as a full day off.
If it's not, sometimes it's embedded within the April vacation.
Okay.
Sometimes it's like in March and it just sort of is a standalone all by itself and doesn't about anything in April. And in this case, it happens to be the Friday before where the April break would traditionally be.
Are we voting on this one?
Yes, we are voting on this calendar.
Okay.
Then we can start next school year.
Any other questions regarding the calendar?
Do any of the days line up with any of the elementary school orange definitions?
Not particularly, and like a big piece of that is, I think one of the middle schools tends to do their professional learning days on Fridays before the holiday vacations, and our professional development and evaluation committee very specifically asked not to do that, because it's just not a good learning environment for staff to try to participate at that point. We moved it to Thursdays this year, and it's been far more successful. And then, things like parent-teacher conferences, we actually deliberately schedule offset so that parents who have kids in both elementary and middle don't end up in the same parent conference schedules. So we have alignment with the vacations, the big chunks of time, but a lot of those half days we do not. And there's, in some cases, a very deliberate reason not to. Also,
Dr. Byers, has there ever been any consideration to begin school after Labor Day?
Not for a long time, I don't think. No.
Okay. There are school districts that begin after Labor Day, so I was just wondering if it was ever a consideration for Amity.
As far as the BOA superintendents, when we've met, have not. I think there was a fairly big shift with that at the point when, we ended up with so many snow days one year that we went until June 30th. And after that, districts across the state all shifted back to the before Labor Day start. And at this point, none of the BOA districts have indicated that they would like to see a difference there.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Byers, how does this match up with testing for the students?
So the state really has given us testing windows, as opposed to, 10 years ago, we had very specific dates, on March 5th, you're going to take this test. So because everything is really electronic now and we have testing windows, this will line up fine. We won't have any issues with it.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't see any other questions. Do we need a motion to
I
accept?
think we do need a motion, yes.
Okay, would someone like to make that motion? Thank you. Do we have a a second?
Second.
Dr. Hartshorn? Any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, we are now voting to accept the school calendar for 2022, 2023 as presented.
Mr. Belfonti,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Lightfoot,
Yes.
Mr. Hartshorn,
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard,
Yes.
Ms. LaBeer Daddio, Mr. Reed,
Yes.
Dr. Turner,
Yes.
Dr. Oladele,
Yes.
Ms. Schuster.
Yes.
Okay, that's accepted. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to item 10, correspondence. Cycler, do you have much correspondence?
Hi, we had 3 letters of correspondence this month. First, we had a letter from Mary Carlson, special education teacher at Amity High School, announcing her retirement at the end of the school year after 39 years of service. We had a letter from Miss Joanne Espidone, who is a resident of Orange, asking some questions and having some concerns regarding school safety in light of the incident in Oxford, Michigan. And the third letter we received was from Mr. Anthony Cuso, which was a follow-up from his public comment the month prior, offering some services regarding school safety.
Thank you for that comment. Moving on to reports. I just have one item for the chairman's report. I know Dr. Oladele asked last meeting during new business for a time when we could discuss the school climate safety survey and have a presentation and have some discussion. So with everything going on with the holidays and our January meeting and budget meetings, we decided that the end of January would be a good time to have that happen for all of us, so we can hear that. I think that's really instrumental in how the perception is of the students and the community, and we get to really tune into what's going on. So I know that's important. I think we were talking about Monday, January 31st. Is that still good, Dr. Byers?
Yes, that is.
Okay. So you could pencil that in. We will be sending out a more formal notice, but the 31st is the day we're going to be discussing that. That's all I had. I'm going to move on to the first one of the leases. Dr. Oladele, I don't know if you had anything on that.
Sure, I'm happy to give a brief update. So, oops, I thought I was still muted. So for ACES, they've recently approved tuition and service rates for the next fiscal year and non-bargaining packages. They're discussing purchase of the Wintergreen School property that I think they were previously in and were asked to leave, and now they're in the process of purchasing that property. And I think the other big thing for them is the focus on transitioning the Chase STEAM School in Waterbury, expanding it to include grades 9 through 12. So thinking about like what that looks like and rolling out, adding those additional grades and recruitment and thinking about modifications to the facilities. But that's the report from them.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on to Hoc School Safety. I know you mentioned this a little bit. Dr. Myers, is there anything else to add on that?
No, except that, we did lose our chairman of that committee, so if there is anybody who has interest in that Mr. Belfonti would probably appreciate somebody stepping up, and then they could also come to the meetings that happen at the district level with our school safety committee people, so there would be a little bit more of a flow of information from those meetings back to the board, so.
Well, just so members know, how often is it being used?
It's like once every 2 months, so sort of like every other month, and I think it meets at 2:45. Right, 2:45?
So if anyone is interested, please let me know. Moving on to CABE. Dr. Turner.
There are a couple things from CABE. They note problem that we're all seeing with community division, and they suggest that it would be a great thing for boards to review our vision and mission statements together with new members so that we can get everyone pulling together on the board in the new year. They have launched a new program called Standing Up for Public Schools, where they welcome videos from people that we would consider stars in our community talking about what they got out of their public education at Amity. And the purpose of this is to try to improve the conversation that we have. That is an awful lot of negativity about public education right now. Finally, the Department of Education has launched a program called Voice for Change, which involves students in participating districts getting to pet proposals to spend $20,000 for their schools. Amity is not a participating district, but they assure us that there are going to be more educations for student engagement and the funding distribution coming down the pipe. So we have that to look forward to.
Moving on to curriculum, this is the largest agenda for curriculum Ms. Carlson I've seen in a long time.
We'll try to get through in the next hour.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm glad Dr. McPadden is still here with us. So discussion and possible action on the following 3 new courses. The first one I think everyone's aware of because they presented this to us last year. So we all knew this was coming our way, the African American, Black, and Puerto Rican Latino Studies course. So Kara Haas completed the proposal. It's in your packet, and while we're proposing it, we know that it's mandated by the state. So that's the first course. The second course is Exploring Technology Education. I don't know if you guys have had time to go through it. It's really exciting for kids. It's really an exploratory course, and the kids will have every 5 weeks rotate. So it's really exciting, I think, for kids. And then the third course is a structured literacy course, and this is a smaller course around structured literacy. If you read in there, this is really for 8 kiddos right now at high school. So there's information in there if you would like to read about it. We have Dr. McPadden here if you have any questions.
Any questions for Dr. McPadden or Ms. Carlson?
I have a question. The course, the first course, the African Americans and Latin Studies course, how did we decide that that would be an elective rather than a required course?
Because statutorily right now it is it's to be offered as an elective. So this was put in by state statute, and it was put in to be an elective, not to be a required course.
Is the statute Connecticut Public Act number 19 through 12 that's in the packet?
Yes. I don't know if that's the full statute listed there, but that was the statute that required school districts to offer that course. But the reason that they wouldn't have made it a mandated course is because of the unfunded, it would have become an unfunded mandate of hiring all of the teachers that you would need to teach a required course. So it's listed as an elective because then it's not an unfunded mandate.
Would we really need new teachers to teach this course?
Yes.
To teach every student in the school, yeah.
Yes.
Does that answer your question, Dr. Oladelli?
Yes, I guess I'm just, I don't know, maybe if you could explain a little more why we would need new teachers as opposed to our current teachers with, I presume, like backgrounds in social studies and the social studies teachers to sort of get trained and acquire new skills to be able to teach us so that it would not be an unfunded mandate.
Well, because we make sure that our staffing meets the course requirement needs that we currently have. So if we added an additional credit that students would have to take as a graduation requirement, then we would need to hire additional teachers to teach that additional course that is now required for graduation. So we sort of, balance our staffing with the classes and credits that students have to take. And if all of our social studies teachers are already have a full slate of classes that they have to teach, then adding a new required class for 1,500 students would require new teachers to be hired.
Thank you. What do we expect in terms of like enrollment for these courses? And what if it sort of falls flat and you have, I don't know, a handful of students?
So we have absolutely no idea because we've never offered it before. I would say schools of a comparable size have found that they've been able to run at least 2 sections maybe, but I don't think we'll know until we get course registrations.
Thank you.
Any other questions regarding those 3? Okay. Moving on to item B. We cover that, Ms. Carlson, or?
So I think we have to take that one as a vote because it's its own, so vote to approve the new courses, and then you would have to do the modifications as a separate vote.
Got it.
So we would need a motion to approve the 3 new courses.
3-1, okay, under 4A, 1, 2, and 3.
So Andrea is
Okay,
making a motion.
thank you. A little behind here. Do we have a second to approve those 3? Ms. Carlson, thank you. Any further discussion on those 3? Okay, seeing none, we will call
Mr. Belfonti?
the roll. Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Eichler?
Yes.
Mr. Hartshorn?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Ms. Lavere-Gadio?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Dr. Turner?
Yes.
Dr. Omidele?
Yes.
Ms. Schuster?
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Thank you, everyone.
Sorry for the confusion. And so the next, these are really all either name changes or length of course changes. So from full year to semester courses, really to provide greater choice for kids and more opportunity for kids. So I'm not sure if you guys want me to go through each one, but you can really just see the name changes throughout. It's really art driven. Carla was very excited in our curriculum meeting. And then some music courses on the next page. The only question that came up in the curriculum committee felt really confident in moving all these forward to the board. The only question that we did have Dr. Byers was around the purpose of moving from full year to half year. How do curriculum contact kind of a course like that, because there's a question from other members.
So, I think the idea being is that when you do have the sort of the half year course, the courses, then what you would have covered in ceramics 1 that may now get split into ceramics 1 and 2, you still ultimately perhaps are covering all of it, but just you're not locked into that for an entire year. So it does help to have the half year electives. Also that way, if the student does get locked into something and finds that they don't love it, they don't get stuck there for a year, but have, at least, it allows essentially for more exploratory nature of the school. So I can't say that we're going to compact everything all into the same course. We probably aren't. It's going to have to be adjusted, and you're not going to get the same things done in that amount of time. But the idea being that it also opens up more opportunities for kids to take different things. So that way they actually have a more comprehensive and varied experience as opposed to something that's rather fixed for a year.
Mr. Chairman? You have to make a motion to accept the name and length changes of the 12 courses presented on our agenda.
Okay, thank you. Would someone like to second that?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussion regarding these 12?
Just clarification, maybe I didn't hear this correctly. The digital art course is in fact going from a full year course to a half-year course, not to 2 half-year courses.
Yes.
Okay, so that course particularly will definitely be a change as to what was taught before.
Unless they have a different course proposal to cover something else with a different name later.
Okay.
And it may also be an adjustment because of the addition of the Exploring Technology Ed course, because they had to pull people out from courses they taught to do the Exploring, so now they need half semesters for the others. I have a feeling they're all connected together.
Well, this reduction in the course, maybe it's going to have to result in a new course, but will it involve any staff changes?
No, right now, I mean, essentially the problem right now is kids can't get all of these courses that they want to get because they're year-long courses and they are over-requested. So hopefully by putting them to semester courses, more students will be able to take what they want to take, even though it may not be for an entire year.
Any other comments or questions? Shannon, would you call the vote?
Mr. Belfonti?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Carlson? Yes. Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Eichler?
Yes.
Mr. Hartshorn?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Ms. Revere Daddio?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Dr. Turner?
Yes.
Dr. Oladele?
Yes.
Ms. Schuster?
Yes.
That passes. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to district health and safety. Occurred regarding that one?
We did meet last week, and a lot of our conversation was actually around the changes that we're seeing in COVID numbers in the school, reflective of the COVID numbers in the community and the country. So.
And district technology, I see they have a monthly report on page 56.
Yes. So a monthly report on 56. We also have a meeting scheduled tomorrow to talk about the learning management system. And I know that Mr. DeRosa met with members of the student government and answered their questions that they had about the weight sensors. And they left, I think, wanting to know why we haven't installed them already.
I have a question. This is actually about the COVID numbers.
Yes.
Can you give us an idea of how many cases there are in the community?
So I publish it on Fridays, and I think on this Friday there was, I can't remember, I'll go look so I have something accurate. I feel like the number 14 or 15 at the high school is in my head, but I could be off. And then there were none in Bethany and 2 here in Orange. So, but I will try to find that and just forward it to the 2 of you so you have the accurate Friday update.
Any questions on the technology report on page 56? Move on to facilities, and I'll leave Mr. Reed, and we have a report on 57.
We do have a report on 57, talks about some of the projects. Obviously, we want to congratulate Phil Ainello from the head custodian from Williams Orange on his retirement, 36 years of service to the district, which we certainly appreciate. And it talks about the issues with the track that we're still working on. So we met on the 7th with representatives of field turf and classic turf regarding concerns with water on the track. We have planned to have ongoing communication to work towards a resolution. They believe that it's going to resolve itself just with time and as the season goes on. We also voted on recommending to the board about the hiring architects for the outdoor classroom and the lecture hall. We each have gotten a pamphlet with information about Northeast Collaborative Architects with information about their experience and the projects they've done. and we recommended that to the board to address tonight. And then we also moved to recommend them accessing a 5-year capital plan, which is also included in the packet, I believe.
And just a couple updates. First of all, Mr. Martoni is not here this evening because we gave him the night off since he has to go to the Woodbridge Wetlands Commission this week and talk to them about the proposed culvert cleanout. So I told him I would trade the board meeting for the wetlands meeting, and I feel like we all got the better end of the deal. And then the other thing, which this is actually pretty important, we, since both before and after the facilities meeting, we have been in contact with Field Turf because of our concerns with the track. And Field Turf has agreed to have an independent consultant come and look outside of the contractor who built the track. So they will work to identify who that person is and will work on getting the report back to us with a timeline, obviously sometime before the start of the track season. So I think that they definitely heard the concerns that were brought by the facilities committee, and we're willing to go get a third party to take a look to see if there's another opinion out there besides that of the individuals who built it.
And the representative of Field Turf were also very clear that for this spring, when we have tracking, they are going to make sure that the track is ready to go for the season. If it means coming in and blowing off the track to make sure that it's ready to go, they're going to go.
Are there puddles in the track, or when it says retaining water?
So a couple of us walked the track the other night, and when you walk on the inner side of it, like the inside where the track meets the turf field, it's a little bit spongy, and you can, it almost looks like you're walking on sponge because that's what the track looks like, but it's a harder material, and you can see water starting to seep up through, and so there's that water coming through between the concrete base and then the material that goes on top. I have a pamphlet from them that kind of will show you what it looks like, and so if you want to see that, I'll show you that later. Thank you.
Right. I just wanted to call out the retirement of Phil Iannello, who was on the report. You mentioned that after 36 years. I just wanted to also mention it's 36 years with never taking a sick day, which is just sort of, in this day and age, it's just sort of pretty impressive, but very healthy individual. So. Yeah. That's just a small. After 36 years not taking a sick day, I thought that was worth an extra sort of acknowledgement. Yeah, shout out.
Hi, sorry if you've said this and I missed it, but what was their thought behind the track not draining?
A confluence of the perfect storm of the concrete still drying, that it is off-gassing water vapor, that we have significant temperature changes right now we did at the point that we were kind of looking at it between cold nights and hot days, so that you were getting more condensation being formed. And then the shade that is over on the 100 straightaway, that's kind of blocking sunshine from getting to the track to actually dry it. So you put all those things together, and that's why the track is wet.
Thank you.
You said that actually better than they did.
It's because
Patrick.
an awful lot.
The Schuster.
Patrick, so the track has been wet since September. Did they tell you, like, through communications via email, other than at the facilities meeting, as to why? So when the students or the athletes run on the track, they get wet, and it's not in the area that they were specifying that's shaded, but it's, you know, I walked the track the day before, and I also know students who are on the track who run it, and they get wet. Their feet are wet when they're running it. So as you mentioned, it's not safe, especially with the freezing and the thawing. So are they saying that the cool nights and the warm days, even in September, were attributing to this?
Yes, and the off-gassing of the track cooling, and yes.
Okay. And who is the independent contractor who's going to come out and assess the track? Did they identify anyone yet?
No, they have not yet.
Okay. Because I remember that Classic Turf was also saying that there are only 4 of these tracks because it's not asphalt that are here. Are they staying specifically in Connecticut or on the East Coast?
So there are only 4 that they have constructed.
That they have constructed.
Correct.
Okay. And was there any other installer that does these tracks here?
Yes. Yes, there absolutely are. And so again, we're again putting, letting them kind of look at who the consultant or the third party opinion may be, but there are other companies that install these tracks in this area.
Okay, because I remember them saying that they haven't had this type of problem before. Has any installer had this type of problem before?
Well, we haven't talked to any other installer except for Classic as of right now, but that's what we're hoping to get from a third party opinion.
I actually asked the Classic Turf person that, and he said that he had reached out to people and they had not, but hopefully we will get a third party opinion that maybe can provide some other information.
Okay, because did you say during the facilities meeting that you had reached out to some other companies yourself and they also said they hadn't seen this problem before, or did I misunderstand that?
No, I believe I asked him, I said, if it was my, if I was Classic Turf, I would do that. And they said, well, I did. He said that he did reach out to other companies that he knows that did it, that construct turf or tracks with the concrete underneath. And they said they hadn't seen this.
Okay, are they going to do it relatively soon, or are we going to have to wait till March and the track season and the thaw?
So will we set our next meeting to be in February?
Well, we asked for a meeting between January and February about this issue, and then a pre-track season meeting on March 1st. Not everything is tentative at this point.
Okay. So we're not sure if this is going to affect the spring track season then?
Not at this time, no.
Okay, thank you.
They referenced the culvert cleanout. Could you give us some background as to how this might impact the water situation?
Yes. So the culvert being clogged up could also be meaning that the water is not draining the way that it should be. So it's part of getting the culvert cleaned.
Yeah.
Yep.
Any other questions on facilities? Okay. Moving on to finance. Ms. Brown, Ms. Loomis.
Well, we had a rather quick finance meeting, and there's a number of items here that we'll go through. And here's the other. Lost for a second there. Too much fogging on my glasses. We talked about the minutes, of course, and the budget process and the dates. And I don't know if we need to go through that because it's in the packet. Do you want to mention that again?
I think it's worth mentioning the budget update that we are coming in with the initial request for 7.16. The full board did have a special meeting with all the department requests, so you were able to see what was driving that 7.6. Right now, we've identified $906,000 in cuts to bring the budget down to 5.4. We've had that first general meeting with all the administrators. We've had individual meetings with departments, and tomorrow we have another general meeting with all the departments together, trying to bring this number down. But as you probably know from the presentations at night, beyond, this cuts here, it's going to be difficult because of the technology needs, the security needs, the difference in prices, to bring this 5.4 number down. It's going to be a challenge. I did kind of list for you by category where we've made cuts so far. And then the budget calendar with highlighted dates. We do have our dates scheduled for the individual towns. We will present to the AFC on January 10th, the town of Orange Board of Finance, January 24th. And then the next night in Woodbridge, we will present. And then February 8th, we would present in Bethany. And then February 14th, we present to the full board. And then the AFC was reminded they need to make a recommendation to the board by March 1st. And the board has to approve a budget by March 15th.
We did include the budget calendar with the dates because at the presentation, the initial presentation, the board members had mentioned that you would like to just get a refresher on the calendar, so now you have it in your packet for when the dates are. And certainly Terry and I love the moral support that you bring when we go and present in front of the town finance committees. So please know that you are welcome to attend those meetings. And then the other thing that I would just point out, only because we have never done this before, but April 4th is our public budget hearing, and also when we make the final vote on the budget, but that is also going to be a regularly scheduled board meeting, because the board meeting after that would have been during the April break. So we will have a marathon session on Monday, April 4th, but Mr. Belfonti and I talked about it, and we figured one long night was better than a whole bunch of smaller nights to deal with the budget. So there you go.
Okay. Moving on to finance.
Moving on to finance, so we do have there's two projects that we're looking for an architect that's been recommended from Northeast Collaborative Architects of Middletown. There's two costs, one for the lecture hall, which is $10,000, and one for the outdoor classroom structure, which is $4,500. And we would like to, the motion was made to recommend to the board that we award those services for those two projects, and that is in the packet, if anyone would like to make that motion.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, we have a second?
I'll second.
Second, thank you. Have we used this company before as a district?
We have not, but I did hand out their proposal with their background, and they've done quite a number of school districts in Connecticut. So they've done outdoor structures, and they've done multi-purpose rooms like a lecture hall. So they have experience in both areas.
And actually in the packet, if you look at it, well, we've never worked with them. Mr. Marconi, in his position in Region 16, did actually work with them. So he has had some experience with them as an architectural firm.
Good.
And the facilities committee and finance committee included.
Any other questions regarding what we're reading on page 62? And call the vote.
Mr. Belfonte?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Carlson? Yes. Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Eichler?
Yes.
Mr. Hartshorn?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Ms. Lavere Gadia?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Dr. Turner?
Yes.
Dr. Oladele?
Yes.
Ms. Schuster?
Yes.
Okay, that passes, thank you.
There is an additional vote for the board because there has been no funds designated towards the lecture hall. So we're asking from the 1% that was appropriated in August that right now it's just a placeholder. It's probably woefully low, but a place to start for the lecture hall at $110,000. So at the bottom of page 62, there's an additional motion for the board.
Okay, so that's the move to designate $110,000 to the lecture hall renovation project from the existing capital non-recurring fund.
So again, just to be clear, we're not moving any money, but the 1% we all agreed when we put it in there, we would designate for specific projects. So this is really to designate that money for the lecture hall renovation.
Right.
So, thank you, Mr. Lewis.
Second.
Who seconded that? Jen.
Thank you. Any discussion regarding that?
So we don't know what the final project would be cost yet, so we'll have another vote when it comes time to, so it's just,
Yes.
we don't have to move it, but it's a placeholder at this point, yeah.
Okay, so we can call that vote.
Mr. Belfonti?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Eichler?
Yes.
Mr. Hartshorn?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Ms. LeBear Gadia?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Dr. Turner?
Yes.
Dr. Oliveri?
Yes.
Ms. Schuster?
Yes.
That passes, thank you, everyone.
And then if you go to 63, page 63 on the packet, there's discussion of monthly financials starting there. And Terry, did you want to make a comment about the medical rate coming in?
Sure, so there's not much change on the monthly financials, a little more in special ed excess costs grant expected after the December report was filed, then some tuition and transportation changes up and down. The medical is running at 99.5% of expected claims, so we're really still continuing right around that 100% of expected claims. There's not really anything else notable on the forecast.
And then going on to transfers under 3,000. Anyone has any questions on that? Otherwise, there's transfers above 3,000 next page, or 91, or 93. And there we have two actions and two transfers, which we took all as one vote. So it was it's the bond projects, it's the it's additional engineering costs, and then a transfer, and then it's the concrete around the field house for painting concrete. To pay for that is $2,500.
Okay, so do we want to take a motion to accept all of them as one?
Yeah, if somebody can make a motion to approve both actions and both transfers required for both actions, so it's 10,000 for the first project and 2,500 for the second project.
But we can discuss that for someone makes a motion.
Of course.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Ms. Carlson, Mr. Reed. And that's to accept them as one. Okay, so we can do that, and we can, unless someone wanted to, have a comment.
You don't even have to do that. If you just make the motion to include everything, you don't have to get
So
permission.
the way that we made the motion at AFC was to approve the additional engineering costs for the HVAC project and transfer the funds from paving to HVAC, and approve the additional concrete sections for the athletic project and approve the transfer from paving to the athletic project. And that all becomes one motion.
Instead of four.
Okay, so Ms. Carlson, is that okay with you? Was that your motion?
Yes.
Okay, is that how?
Exactly how Dr. Bowers.
I thought so.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Reed, that's what your second was. Good. And we discussed this?
Now we can have a discussion.
Okay.
Sure.
I just had a question. So the extra engineering costs for the HVAC project, I know this is much on time, but do you know exactly what that was about? Why
So
now?
we really had a pretty general guess at what engineering was going to cost for the HVAC system when we started the project. And we've just kind of been adding to it as we keep using Dan films to come out, troubleshoot, problems that we're working with, save more, and resolve issues, and go through the punch list with us. So we're close to finish. I don't think we're going to need the whole 10,000, but I know we have a $5,000 bill there, and I know we're not quite finished. So.
Any other questions?
Mr. Belfonti?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Eichler?
Yes.
Mr. Hartshorn?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Ms. Lavere Daddio?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Dr. Turner?
Yes.
Dr. Oladelli?
Yes.
Ms. Schuster?
Yes.
That passes, thank you.
And then the last item was the update on the bond projects, the budget report and the audit update. Chairperson.
Sure, so, I think we only made one HVAC sale since the last report. We still have 234,000 in contingency as far as the bond projects go. And the audit report, we got the draft Friday afternoon. Ms. Kovalich and I are going through it, and we'll get it back to the auditors as quickly as possible. The auditors may need to file an extension with the state. The audit's due on December 31st. But we still expect that we'll have it for the board in January to approve the final report.
Any questions regarding that report? So everything's done. Wraps it up.
It does.
Except for finance.
So we'll move on to policy. Mr. Howard is no longer with us.
I will punt, I guess. Actually, policy did not meet in November. We did not have a quorum, so we were unable to conduct our meeting. So all you have before you tonight are second reads that have already come to you ahead of time. So just to, again, go through very briefly, 4134 is an existing policy, and it's been updated to reflect current processes. 4135 is also an existing policy, but under a different number. So we have changed the number to be reflective of the CAVE model policy, and then updated that to reflect most recent changes in legislation. 4140.2 is a new proposed policy, but it reflects the current practice that we used for the compensation for non-bargaining unit employees. And then 9321 is a current bylaw, and this is the one that has been updated by policy to reflect the possibility for meetings conducted either as we are right now in an in-person manner, but with members attending remotely, or if we ever need to conduct a fully electronic meeting because of a school district closure, and aligned to statutes of everything else we have to do when we do that. Before there's any additional discussion, I will make note that the transgender policy would have come to you for a second read tonight. However, in the process of updating it, we discovered that Amity has had a transgender policy in place for a really long time, but again, under a totally different number. So when we found the right number, we have two policies now, and I want to merge those together, bring that back to policy before I bring it to the board for the second read. So that's kind of why that one fell off, because we found new things, so.
So, do we want to make a motion to accept these all at once, or take them separately? Up to the board.
I'll make the motion to put them all together.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay. Thank you. So we call that vote, just to put them all together.
Mr. Belfonti?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Eichler?
Yes.
Mr. Hartshorn?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Ms. Lavere Daddio?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Dr. Turner?
Yes.
Dr. Oladelli?
Yes.
Ms. Schuster?
Yes.
So all is one. Now we can entertain a motion to accept, and then we can discuss. So I'd like to make a motion. Mr. Reed, thank you. For the second.
Second.
Ms. Brown, thank you. Any discussion regarding these four
Just a question on the meetings. There was some discussion about voting, not counting, or what's the status of that again?
So the policy that is currently here is that the person their vote would count if it was an in-person meeting that they were attending remotely.
It would count.
Yes.
And it would also count, of course, if it was an emergency meeting where none of us could get there, that would still count. So
Yes.
it counts in both cases.
Correct.
That's what I thought.
Yep, so you don't vote on, if you come in the middle of business, you don't vote on that item, because you won't have heard the entire discussion.
Oh, right.
Which in theory is true for an in-person meeting if you miss the other votes and you usually don't vote for it.
I'd just like to say, there were a lot of concerns to balance with this policy, and I think the school has done a great job at threading all of those needles and coming up with a policy that I hope will be acceptable to everyone.
Just for clarification, in going in that direction, one of the things that did come up was the counting of people electronically as part of the quorum. When we have a meeting, there must be a quorum of people actually present at the site of the meeting. You could have 4 people electronically, but if you only have a quorum of 7 here and 1 leaves, even though you still have the people electronically, meeting has to be ended at that point.
And the thought process there, I believe, was because if something goes wrong with the technology, you suddenly lose the remote people, you don't have a quorum for voting, and you can't complete your business.
But wouldn't you end the meeting at that point, just like you would if?
Yes, you end when the in-person quorum goes away.
But if you have a special meeting with everybody online,
Yeah.
then you have a quorum automatically. So why the difference?
I think that the policy committee really wanted to stress the importance of being in person.
And I appreciate that.
And so by kind of using the leverage of the quorum, and if people leave, then you no longer have a quorum, and so now you've sort of personally just derailed the business of the board. I hate to say it, but it's a little bit of a guilt factor to say you need to come to a meeting and be in person, because that's really how the business should be conducted. But we'll have this leverage for times when that can't happen for some reason.
And a process for people who have a reason that they need to be out.
Yep.
Yep.
So I think that's kind of where that was sort of, and that I think is what Dr. Turner was referring to, the balance, because we were struggling really hard to kind of somehow figure out how to emphasize how important we felt the in-person participation was, but acknowledging that there are moments in time when remote is necessary.
Yeah, and that was not like in person just for the sake of gathering us in a room, but so that the public can be here and hear what we're doing, along with the increased ease of communication, and we can see people.
One of the things that we've been challenged with is when we do have a fully online meeting, it's very hard for the public to hear or be part of that, and there are ways of doing that. Is that something we can continue to try to promote? Not that it has to be in policy, but.
In the policy, it does still say that they, are able to submit the public, let's see, the public may email the clerk of the board by 2 p.m. on the day of the meeting and request to speak during public comment as noted.
Right.
So it would allow them access to the meeting.
But it's displaced in time, access, so it's not.
How is it displaced in time? It's occurring during the meeting.
They have to.
They have to tell Ms. Perro by 2 p.m.
By 2, right?
Yeah.
Right. So they can't just come to the meeting when we're having the meeting and be part of the audience.
Well, they can. They're going to the live stream. They would be part of the,
They can't public comment. Sorry.
Yes, they can.
During the meeting.
Yes, they can. That's the whole point of telling Ms. Perro by 2 p.m. is then they would have access into the meeting to make public comment as part of the meeting.
If they don't do it by 2, then they can't.
Correct. Then they can still submit the comment in writing or as correspondence.
Right.
But again, I think that's a step beyond where we have been.
It's better. It's definitely better.
So,
Yep. And And that's just to keep the security of the meeting as far as who can talk at the meeting.
Yes, not so much that who can talk, anybody can talk, but it's really honestly to prevent the Zoom bombers from coming in and just dropping whatever they want to in the meeting.
Right.
At least this way we have some control over who's having access to the meeting login information.
If access is given, so if somebody asks for access by 2 and they get the code to join the meeting, can they give that code to another person as well?
They could, but the whole point of Ms. Caro knowing the name of the person who wants to make the public comment is we would only let them in. So that's the reason why they have to sort of make a reservation, so to speak, and then get the code.
The other piece is that Ms. Para will be able to recognize those in the waiting room who emailed before 2 o'clock, so that, you know, even if the link was shared, you know, if you didn't email before, then then you wouldn't be able to comment.
Would that stop the spam bombers then, if you just share the link and then say, you know, put your name, you know, put your name in a queue and then we'll call your name off one after the other? You can almost cut them off if you need to.
Yeah, but what's better than actually having a positive match that you have before 2 o'clock, and then Ms. Farrow can make her list and have 3 or 4 hours to, you know, get familiar with it and be ready to.
I'm just trying to keep it as close to the reality of an in-person meeting as possible. When people show up at 6 o'clock, they can speak in public comment versus letting us know ahead of time, but they don't do that now. So just trying to keep it as similar as possible. I think that other districts are doing it all the time. The technology exists. I just don't know why, you know, if we could keep it a little closer to, if you at the last minute at 5 o'clock decide to come and speak on something you just found out about, you have an opportunity to do that. We only meet once a month.
I agree, but I think we do have to balance having a meeting that's totally disrupted and Zoom bombed and like something happens where that meeting ends. The other piece is that I don't anticipate that we'll meet very often. I anticipate it would be a special circumstance where we'd all be meeting virtually. And just thinking about all the other opportunities that we have for folks to come monthly and provide public comment. It's not perfect, but I think we'd be being really naive by having a process other than I think what's recommended right now.
What were you going to say?
I was going to say, I don't think we're going to have, I agree with you that many districts are doing it and it seems to work, but I don't think we're going to have the opportunity to have these virtual.
Hopefully it's all not, right? And it is much better than it was. And so I really appreciate that people be able to get the link and do that and comment in, because we went 5 months without the ability to have public comment other than ring.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
And the other clarification is the security of executive session. And if a member is participating and we go into executive session, they cannot be included in that.
Which also makes a good, strong argument for the quorum thing, for them not counting for quorum, because then you would have that. If something came out, exactly, that would be a very good point.
Any other comments or questions? These 4. Now, we'll call the vote.
Mr. Belfonti?
Yes.
Mr. Bragg?
Yes.
Ms. Carlson? Yes. Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. Hartshorn?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard? Yes. Ms. Lavere Daddio?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Dr. Turner?
Yes.
Dr. Oladele?
Yes.
Ms. Schuster?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Those 4 are now policy. Moving on to item 10, personnel. I didn't think we had anything.
No, we do not.
All right, any new business to discuss? Items for the next agenda, to be due by December 31st, please. And we will do a motion to adjourn.
Make the motion
Nelson? Braff? Thank you. All those in favor, can you signify, Mr. Braff? Signify by raising your hand to adjourn. Thank you. Okay, hands up, okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
So, see, that's it, they're already gone.
Yeah.
So you can, if you want to, click that. So you can go to more